last time we did microscopy. Now we move a bit further. Okay, so we start doing cell concepts. Okay, so we have to understand what a cell is. We also have to understand the types of cell we are having, and some of the parts of the cell and the function of those parts. Okay, and also need to tackle a bit of history where these cells came from and how they were brought about. Okay, so that's what we are going to cover in this tutorial. Okay, so we know all living organisms have these characteristics. They all contain cells. So as long as it's a living organism, the first thing it needs to have, it's a cell. That's one characteristic it needs to have, a cell, okay? So all living organisms have cells. Now, these cells are compacted in a certain way. Okay, so we can have a cell. Okay, so different types of cells will come together to form what we call a tissue, isn't it? So different types of cells will come together to form a tissue, okay? So now we have four types of tissues. You have what we call epithelial tissues. You have epithelial tissues. You can have connective tissues. You can have muscle tissue. Okay, so you can have muscle tissue and also nerve tissues. Okay, a nerve. So these are the four types of tissues you're going to have. So you have these cells, certain type of cells, they come together to form these tissues. So you have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and the nerve tissue. Okay, so now these different types of tissues, they can come together, okay, to form an organ, isn't it? So in an organ, there are different types of organs. You can have the liver, you can have the stomach, okay? You can have different types of organs, all those organs you're having, isn't it? Okay. So now, these organs, okay, they come up together to form a system, okay? So they come together to form a system. Now, we have about 12 systems, okay? You have 12 systems. You have the respiratory systems, one of the examples. You can have the GIT, which is the digestion system. Okay. You can have what else? You can have the CVS, which is the cardiovascular system. What other system? There are about 12 systems you're going to have, and those systems are performed by the function of those systems are performed by different organs. So different organs come together to form a certain system. You can have a central nervous system. All those systems you have in the body, all the 12 systems, they are made up of different organs, isn't it? Okay. Now, this system, we put all these systems together, they form what we call an organism. Okay. So you have an organism. Okay. So living things are going to be are going to be complex like this, isn't it? They're going to be made up in such a way. Okay. So another characteristic of living organism, their sensitivity, okay? So they are able to respond to a stimuli, that's a sensitivity, okay? They are able to grow and also produce, okay? They are able to use energy to do some functions, okay? So they use energy to perform some function, okay? Then they are able to maintain internal body conditions. Okay, so that is called homeostasis, the maintenance of internal body condition. That is homeostasis. Okay, okay. So they are also able to adapt. So those are some of the characteristics of a living organism. Okay, so now what is a cell? In your own words, define for me a cell. What is a cell? How can you define a cell in your own terms? What is a cell? Anyone to help us the definition for a cell? And please be paying attention towards the end of the tutorial. I've put questions from your test one so that we see how you're going to be asked in a test. So make sure you follow whatever we are doing and feel free to participate. What is a cell? From your secondary, what is your cell? How do you define a cell? Okay. So a cell is simply a basic unit functional structure of an organism, isn't it? Okay, so we have different types of cells. You have different types of cells. We are going to talk about those ones. And we have organisms which can have one cells. So organisms which are going to have one cell, they are going to be called unicellular. Okay. So organisms with that are composed of one cell, they are going to be called unicellular. Okay. Then you have also organisms that will have more than one cell. Okay, more than one cell. Those are going to be called multicellular organism. Okay, so that's what you have in. Okay, so we have two types of organism. Those ones with one cell, which we call unicellular, and those ones with the different cells, they are going to be called multicellular. Okay, so these are the examples of the cells you can have. You can have what we call a plant cell and also an animal cell. Okay, so this is a plant cell. That's how it will look like. Okay, so identify parts which are only found in a plant cell and they are not there in an animal cell. You did that in your secondary. So you should be able to differentiate an animal cell and a plant cell. You can see here a plant cell will have a cell. An animal cell will not have a cell. Okay. So this one, the plant cell, you can see it will have a very big or large vacuole. Then here you have small vacuoles which are going to be present in the animal cell. Okay. This one will have chloroplast, which is involved in autotrophy, and you know that is how plants obtain their own food, isn't it? Then in animal cell, you won't find chloroplast. Okay, okay. So you have in animal cells, you are going to have centrosomes. Then in a plant cell, you are not going to be there. Okay. Also, lysosomes are going to be found in an animal cell. You are not going to find them in a plant cell. So you should be able to differentiate an animal cell and a plant cell, and take note of the parts which are found only in an animal cell and those ones which are found only in a plant cell. Okay, so now let's go back. Let's do some history. Let's find out how we arrived here. Where is all this the cell theory coming from? Okay, so now we have people who started studying cells. Okay, so everything has its own origin. So even cells, for us to conclude that okay, we have a cell, meaning it came from somewhere. Okay, so we have people who started studying cell. The first one was Robert Hooke. Okay, so this guy, the first thing he did, he developed a microscope. Okay, using that microscope, he went on and cut a bud. Okay, so you have a plant like this. Okay, so he cut a bud of a plant. Okay, then using that microscope, he viewed and discovered that there were some small particles. There are tiny particles which he saw, and those particles were dead particles. Okay, and he called them cellulae, and nowadays we refer to them as cells. Okay, so that's what Robert Hooke did. He was the first one to start all this cell theory process. Okay, so that was done in 1965. Okay, then later on, uh, we had this guy called Anthony. So he studied cells a bit further, and then he discovered that using this microscope, you observe that some of the organism or tiny objects you viewed were actually having life in them. They were alive. Okay, so and he called those as the animalcules. Okay, then we went on. Now there are three guys who came up together and came up with what we call the cell theory. Okay, so the first guy was called Matthias. Okay, so Matthias is the first one who came up with the first prostate of your cell theory. Okay, so he stated that all plants are aggregates of fully individualized, independent, separate beings, namely the cells themselves. Okay, so he's the first one who started the cell theory, and is the one who gave the first prostate of your the cell theory, which is this one here. Okay, so he stated that all plants are aggregate of fully individualized, independent, and separate beings, namely the cells themselves. Okay, so that was the first one with Matthias. Okay, then the second one was Schwann. Okay, so Schwann, uh, okay, so Schwann also came in and concluded that animals are also made up of cells. Okay, so this one he concluded on plants, isn't it? He said all plants are made up of cells. Okay. Then this one came in and said, oh, even animals are also made up of cells. Okay. So this one is the one who made the second prostate of your cell theory, which is he concluded that all animals are also made up of cells. Okay. Then the last guy was Ludolf. Okay, so for Ludolf, he came up with another prostate, which he said those cells, both in plants and animal cells, they are able to pre-exist. Okay, so they are able to divide to form other cells. Okay, so together these three, they are they came up with what we call the cell theory. Okay, so this is very examinable. You should be able to know all these three cell theories. Okay, so for us to just run through the three cell theory. So the first one, he said all plants are made up of cells. Okay. Then the second one, he said, okay, even animals are also made up of cells. And then the last one, he concluded that all cells are able to divide to form new existing cells. Okay. So those are the three cell theories we are having. Okay. So are we okay there? Are we okay up to here? Do you have any question up to here? Is everything clear up to here? Okay, okay. Now we have two types of cells. Okay, so the types of cells you are going to have are the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Okay, so these are the two types of cells you are going to have. Okay, is there a question? Okay, so these are the two types of cells you're having. For prokaryotes, these are single cells. Okay.
Yes,
Fleischer, you have a question? What's your question, Fleischer? Okay. Okay. So we have two types of cells. We have what we call prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Okay. So for prokaryotes, these are single cells which you are going to find in bacteria and your archaea. Okay. So in archaea and bacteria, you're going to find the prokaryotes. Okay. For eukaryotes, these are the cells you're going to find in animals, plants, fungi. Those are also protists. Those are the cells, types of cells you are going to find there, which are eukaryotes. Okay, so eukaryotes means a true cell. Okay, then these prokaryotes are single cells. Okay, So for prokaryotes, like we've mentioned, these are going to be found in bacteria which are composed of single cells. Example are bacteria and the arc are there. Okay. Then the diameter, which is 0.1 to 5 micrometer there. Okay. Then these prokaryotes, they do not have nucleus. Okay. They do not have a nucleus. So their genetic material are found in what we call nucleoid. So in, uh, in, in the place of the nucleus, for prokaryotes, they have what we call nucleoid. Okay. That's where you're going to find your genetic material there. Okay. Okay. So, like we've mentioned, these are going to be composed of single cells, okay? And they will have what we call a peptidoglycans on their cell, okay? So, in the cell, you find what we call peptidoglycan, okay? So, this is what you have in. So, this is a eukaryotic cell. A good example of a eukaryotic cell is a plant cell and an animal cell. Those are good examples for your eukaryotic cell. For prokaryotic cell, you can have bacteria, okay? So bacteria cells are prokaryotic cells, okay? So you can see here, you don't have a nucleus, you have a nucleoid instead, okay? Then you can have the cell which will have peptidoglycan in them. You can also have the flagella and the pili and so on and so forth. So those are the parts you are going to find in a eukaryotes, and they are not going to be there in the prokaryotes. Okay, so that's what you have in there. Okay, so this is a general structure of a prokaryotic cell. A good example is a bacteria cell, like we've mentioned. Okay, so it's going to have the outer layer, which is going to be called the capsule. That's the first layer you're going to see. Then you have enclosed by the capsule is going to be a cell. Okay, so you have a capsule on top. Then the cell is the second one. Okay, then you have okay. Okay. So you have your cell membrane there, your cytoplasm. Okay, you are also going to have uh, small organs inside. Okay, so you have the liposomes. Okay, then you are going to have the sex organs for your prokaryotes are called pili. Those are the ones which bacteria use for sex. Okay, those are your sex organ, the pili. Then for movement, they use a flagella. Okay, so you have a flagellum there. Okay, so those are some of the parts you are going to find in a bacteria cell or prokaryote. Okay, okay. Then for eukaryotes, like we've mentioned, it will have a nucleus which will contain the DNA in it, which is the genetic material of a cell, which is their DNA. So you're going to find it in the nucleus. Okay, good example for your eukaryotic cells. You have the plant cells there, the animal cell, the fungi. Those are good examples of eukaryotic cell. Okay. So now let's look at some of the parts which are found in the prokaryote cells only. You are not going to see them in the eukaryotes. You are only going to see them in the prokaryotes, and let's see what their function. Okay. So the first thing is the capsule. We said it's the outer layer. Okay. We said it's the one which encloses the all organs of the cell for prokaryotes. Okay, which is the capsule. Okay. So this one protects against dying, host immunity, and helps for attachment. That's a function of your capsule. You are only going to see it in the prokaryotes. You are not going to find it in the eukaryotes. Okay. Then, like we've mentioned, you have the nucleoid, which will contain genetic material in form of DNA. Okay. So this one does not have a membrane. Unlike the nucleus, which will have which is membrane bound, This one does not have a membrane. Okay. So that's what you have. You also have what we call the plasmid. Okay. So this one is the one which carry antibiotic resistant gene. Okay. So that's for the plasmid. Then you also have the pili. So this one is the one which is involved, like I said, for conjugation and attachment. Okay. So this is your sex organ of a bacteria, the pili. Okay. You have for swimming or movement, you have the flagellum there. Okay. You are also going to have what we call mesosomes. You are only going to find mesosomes in prokaryotic cells. You're not going to see them in eukaryotic cells. These are the ones which carry out respiration. Okay. Then you also have what we call endospores. Okay. So endospores are the ones which give bacteria the ability to survive in harsh conditions like high temperatures. You have very acidic conditions. The bacteria will usually survive in such harsh conditions because of these endospores. Okay. So those are some of the parts you are going to find in prokaryotes, but you are not going to find them in a eukaryote. Okay, so now let's look at some of the parts you are going to find in eukaryotes, but they are not going to be there in prokaryotes. Okay, so one of them is the nucleus. You're not going to find the nucleus in the prokaryotes. Okay, so the function of the nucleus, the one which incorporates your DNA material. Okay, then you have a mitochondria, which you are not going to see in prokaryotes. So this is the one which gives you where you obtain your energy in the form of ATP, isn't it? Okay. Then you have the large endoplasmic reticulum. So these ones are the ones which are involved in protein synthesis. Okay. And then you also have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so these are the ones which are involved in lipid synthesis and also detoxification. Okay, apart from the liver, also the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, they are able to do this detoxification, isn't it? They also, so in cells like muscle cells, okay, muscle cells, these are going to be used as calcium storage, and that calcium you are going to use it for muscle contraction later. Okay, so they also act as calcium storage. These are smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Is there a question? Someone's mic is on. Do you have a question? Okay. Henry, what's your question?
No, I don't have a problem.
Okay, so you kindly mute your mic if there is no question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's what you have. Okay, you also have Golgi apparatus. So these ones are the ones which are involved in modification, packaging of your synthesized proteins and the lipids. Okay, that's the function of the Golgi apparatus. Okay, you also have lysosomes. Okay, so lysosomes, these are digestive enzymes. Okay, so they are the ones which break down your the waste and also damaged organelles. Okay, so that's what you are. So these parts. Remember, these parts of a cell are only found in a eukaryotic cell. You are not going to see them in prokaryotic cells. So take note of that. Okay, so you didn't need to know the parts which are in the prokaryotes and the parts which are in the eukaryotes and the function of these parts. Okay. So I hope people are following. I have questions for your test one. Towards the end, I'll bring those questions so that I see if people are able to answer. Okay. So all these parts of the eukaryotic cells. Okay. We continue there. You have what we call peroxisomes. Okay. So these are the ones which break down your fats. Okay. And also they are the ones which are involved in detoxification of your hydrogen peroxide. Okay. You also have what we call cytoskeleton. Okay, cytoskeleton is going to be composed of microtubules and microfilament. Okay. So these are the ones which are involved in cell division. We'll talk about that. Okay. So we'll talk about cell division stuff. Okay. So you have the central are the ones which are involved in cell division. Then these ones are the ones which are involved in the microtubules, microfilament. They are the ones which are involved in movements, attachment, and all those things. Okay. Then you have your chloroplast, which is involved in uh, photosynthesis. Okay. Then you have the vacuum. So the vacuum, the one which is involved for storage and also maintenance of tubal pressure there. Then you have the cilia and the flagella. Okay. So these ones are hair-like structure causing movement. Okay. So those are some of the parts you're going to see in eukaryotic cells, but they are not there in prokaryotic cells. Okay. Now there are those parts which are found both in eukaryotic cell and the prokaryotic cell. Okay. So structures like the cell membrane. Okay. So this is a selective permeable membrane. So your cell membrane is the one which decides which things are supposed to enter the cell and which things are supposed to come out of the cell. So that is a selective permeable membrane. Okay. So it allows things to come out outside the cell and things to come inside the cell. Okay. So as we are moving, when you do lipids, we will talk about the structure of this cell membrane in detail. So you are going to notice that it's made up of a phospholipid bilayer. So it's going to be a layer of two phospholipids. So it's a phospholipid bilayer. Okay. So it's the one which permits things that are lipid soluble to enter the cell and come out of the cell, and does not allow those things which are, not, are lipid insoluble to come in or out of the cell. So that's a function of your cell membrane. You're going to find it in both eukaryotic cell and prokaryotic cell. Okay. Then the cytoplasm is the one which is going to contain what we call cell organelles. Okay, so you have different types of cell organelles like the mitochondria, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, your rough endoplasmic reticulum, your ribosomes. All those organelles are going to be found in the cytoplasm. Okay, so this is going to be made up of a jelly-like fluid. So that jelly-like fluid is called the cytosol. So the jelly-like fluid found in the cytoplasm is called the cytosol. Okay, you have the ribosomes. These ones are the ones which are involved in protein synthesis. Okay, then you are going to have DNA, which is going to carry your genetic material, and it's going to be found in the nucleus. Okay, then you have the cell. This cell is the one which provides the cell the shape. In prokaryotic, you are going to find what we call peptidoglycan. Okay, so that's what you have. So those are some of the parts which you are going to find in both eukaryotic cell and prokaryotic cells. Okay. Okay, so we need to differentiate eukaryotic cells and prokaryotic cells. We need to differentiate them. Okay, so the first thing we can use is what we call multicellularity. Okay, so which one has a single cell and which one has has a lot of cells, okay? More than one cell. So for prokaryotics, like we've mentioned, these ones are going to be composed of one cell. Then eukaryotics, you are going to have they are going to be composed of more than one cell. Okay, these are going to be multicellular. Okay, so prokaryotics are going to be unicellular. Okay, then eukaryotics are going to be multicellular. These ones are going to be multicellular. Okay, so that's what you have in there. Okay, then in terms of the cell size, okay. Okay, so you notice that your prokaryotes are a bit in terms of size, they are a bit uh, your eukaryotes are a bit larger than they are bigger than your prokaryotes. Okay, so in terms of size, your prokaryotes are a bit small compared to the eukaryotes. Okay, okay. Then in terms of the chromosomes, so uh, you notice that these chromosomes are the ones which are having the genetic material. So now in prokaryotes, you find that those genetic material are going to be found in the nucleoid. We don't have a nucleus here. You're going to have the nucleoid, okay? So which is going to be composed of your genetic material in form of DNA. So you're going to find it here in the nucleoid. Then in prokaryotics, you are going to find this genetic material in the nucleus. Okay, so that's what you have in there. So these prokaryotes, they do not have a nucleus, but eukaryotes, they are the ones which are having a nucleus. So in terms of genetic material, in prokaryotes, you're going to find it in the nucleoid. Then in eukaryotes, you're going to find it in the nucleus. So that's what you have in there. Okay. Then in terms of cell division, for prokaryotes, they undergo what we call binary fusion. Okay. Then for eukaryotes, we'll talk about cell division in the next tutorial. Okay. So for eukaryotes, they undergo what we call meiosis. Okay. Okay, so they undergo what we call meiosis. That's a difference again in terms of cell division. Okay, okay. So in terms of the compartment, the internal compartment, so in the eukaryotes, the enzymes for cellular respiration are packed in the mitochondria. And you know that in the prokaryotes, you don't have a mitochondria. Okay, so you will find that in terms of the enzymes which are involved for respiration, they are not going to be packed in the mitochondria the way it is in the eukaryotes. So these ones are just going to be independent. Okay, so they are not going to be packed in the mitochondria the way you have in eukaryotes. Okay, so in short, in prokaryotes you don't have internal compartments. Okay. So you don't have what we call uh, organelles. You don't have organelles in the prokaryotes. So organelles, cell organelles, we are talking about the mitochondria, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi apparatus. Those organelles that are found in the cytoplasm, you are not going to find them in prokaryotes, but here in eukaryotes, those are going to be there. Okay. So in the prokaryotes, the only organelle we are going to find is the ribosome, which is also there in the eukaryotes. Okay, so that's the difference in terms of compartment. Okay, then the flagellum. Okay, so in the prokaryotes, the flagellum are simple in structure. Okay, they are composed of single fiber of the protein flagellin, spine like propeller there. And then in the eukaryotes, the flagellum is complex. Okay, so that's a difference in terms of the flagellum. Prokaryotes, simple flagellum. Eukaryotes, complex flagellum. Okay, so that's what you have. So you should be able to take note of these differences between eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Okay, so now for the sake of time, let me run through these MCQs for your test one. This was, I think, 2023. Yeah. So these are some of the questions you had in 2023 for test one. So we have a question there. So this one, it's negative marking. So there's an option for I don't know. So if you don't know, you pick I don't know, meaning you get a 0. But if you decide to guess, you can guess, but if you get it wrong, you end up getting a negative mark. You get -1. So if you've gotten a 0, you end up having -1%. Okay, so that's how crucial biology is, and you need to pay much attention. Okay, So you need to give it attention in short, because it's a bit tricky because of the negative mark. So yeah, so let's try this question. From what we've done, you should be able to answer this. Okay. So a set of three basic structures which are used to characterize plant cells are, so set of three basic features which are used to characterize plant cells are, so it's about to kick me out. Just join using the same link, then we finish the MCQs.